We good?
Blow right
Yep.
on it. Just blow right on it.
I'm sorry, Cheryl. My apologies.
I have given people the, some of the ideas from what I sent out in the, email to folks about love, the more descriptors. So I'm just handing that out for people to refer to later. And, I'd hand it out to you, but we'll read them too. So, this last question that we're gonna, talk today about is the question of love. And, Andy Stanley says this is the overarching most important thing. And, he asks us to think about in terms of relationships and love, what does love require us when we're making decisions? So, he makes the case that healthy and beneficial relationships are based on honor and respect. And Jesus gave us the new covenant command to love one another as he has loved us. And that's the standard by which we are to evaluate and base our behaviors, conversations, and attitudes upon. And when applied into the world, it helps to pave the path to enhancing the quality of relationships, and even most ideally makes the world a much better place. However, there's a however, knowing that this command is based on free will, not everybody that we will encounter, and sometimes ourselves, won't follow this command. It can be a challenge. 90% of the time, we can follow it, and then there's that 10% of the time where it's a challenge. So we'll talk about that a little bit, and deciding what's the best thing to do when in doubt, when in question. What does love require of us? The Bible tells us what to do. God tells us what to do, and that's still hard. Praying hopefully helps us what to do. So based on those things, let's watch the video and then we'll discuss some more.
Here we go.
The book there.
There we go. You're doing so well.
How's it going?
Hang
Maybe Roger.
on.
You need a good laugh, Cheryl.
You do.
Wow.
We're gonna get it started here, I promise. This is really easy.
You're doing well.
Yeah.
Yeah, can't you tell?
Oh, that's.
Hey everybody, welcome back. As you probably know, this is our final session together. So I want to pause and say thank you for inviting me into your group. And more importantly, thank you for setting aside some time to talk about one of the most important topics you can talk about, and that is decision making. Now, as we've reiterated through our time together, life is all about decision making, and your decisions determine the direction and quality of your life. And as we've said throughout our sessions together, good decisions require good questions. And of course, we're saying 5 in particular. And in this session, we're going to unpack our final question, the relationship question. By now, it should be clear that the thing that makes these questions clarifying also has the potential to make them a bit terrifying. And I say terrifying because Well, we usually know the answers to these questions before we even finish asking the questions, right? And once we know, we can't unknow. And once we know, we feel accountable. Now, our fifth and final question may be the most clarifying and thus the most terrifying question of all. This will probably be the question you're most tempted not to ask and not to answer honestly. So once again, a disclaimer, you don't have to do anything with your answer, but you owe it to yourself to know the answer, right? What you won't know can hurt you. And in the case of our final question, what you don't know or refuse to know has the potential to hurt you, where you have the potential to hurt the most in your most cherished relationships. Now, when you think about your future, you don't envision yourself alone, right? I mean, when you think about your future, there's somebody beside you. And perhaps that somebody is already beside you. Our final question will help you keep them there. In fact, this question has the potential to enhance the quality of every single one of your relationships. It has the power to restore and heal broken relationships. It has the power to rekindle romance, to restore what was lost. But before the big reveal, another disclaimer. Unlike our other four questions, this question does not come with a guaranteed ROI, return on investment. No tangible, measurable, or even noticeable returns with this one. And the reason is this. Our final question is not about making your life better. It's about making someone else's life better, which may make your life better. But, and this is the payoff, our final question positions you to make the world better. So, here we go. Throughout Jesus' ministry, he hinted that something new was on the horizon, something designed to replace much of what was in place in first century Judaism. And all of his hints, his parables, his insinuations were designed to create a sense of expectation in the minds and the hearts of his first century followers. So when he entered Jerusalem for his final visit and what would be his final Passover meal, crowds lined the streets to welcome him. Their expectations were political, regal, messianic. They knew something was up, and he had their undivided attention, but they did not understand his ultimate intention. So on the night of his arrest, he gathers with his 12 apostles for what would be a final Passover meal, and he made his intentions clear, crystal clear. To begin with, he announced that he was leaving, and that was a downer and was confusing. I mean, why would he leave now? They were on the cusp of a revolution, right? I mean, the kingdom of Israel was about to be restored. And then he laid it out. He said this, "A new command I give you." A new command, they must have thought. I mean, we don't need any new commands. We already have 600 plus commands. And why was he talking about new commands? We need to make plans, right? Besides, what gave Jesus the right to add any new commandments? Only God had the authority to do that. But then again, only God had the authority to forgive sin. So they had seen Jesus step into this uncomfortable role on multiple occasions. So perhaps they were quiet. Anyway, as it turned out, Jesus wasn't even adding a new command to an existing list of commands. He was actually replacing the existing list with one single command. He continued and he said this, "A new command I give you," and here it is, "love one another." Now, that wasn't really all that new, but Jesus wasn't really all that through. He wasn't commanding them to feel something. He was commanding them to do something. And what came next, well, it was unthinkable. But what came next changed the world. And what came next has the potential to change your world. What Jesus said next is the basis for our fifth and final question. What came next trumped the golden rule. I like to call it the platinum rule. Here's what he said. "As I have loved you, so you must love one another. As I have loved you," he defines it, "so you must love one another." That was new. Apparently, doing for others what one hoped others would do for them in return was so last century. Jesus tells his followers they are to do unto others as he had done unto them. Now, this was extraordinarily personal for the men seated around the table that night. I mean, when us modern Christians read, "as I have loved you," we immediately think of the cross, but they didn't. They thought back over the previous 3 years. Perhaps each man in the room was transported back to some particular moment in time where Jesus had loved him particularly well. I mean, he could have worked his way around the room, right? I I mean, one by one, he could have said to each of those 12 men, love as I have loved you. Extend to everyone you meet the same grace and the same forgiveness I extended personally to you. And he could have added this, and gentlemen, if you think you've seen me love, tighten your sandals, you ain't seen nothing yet. Little did they know that on the following day, he would put on a demonstration of love that would take their breath away. Because the following day, he would give his life away. He continued, by this, everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. Now, here's the thing, and this is so easy for us to miss. This new command brand of love was to serve as the unifying and defining characteristic for his new movement, the church. His new command was to serve as the governing ethic, the standard against which all of their behavior was to be measured. They were to love as he had loved. They were to love as he would love, which means this, that following Jesus would not be about looking for ways to get closer to a God who dwelled out there or up there somewhere. Jesus followers would demonstrate their devotion to God by putting the person next to them in front of them. Jesus followers wouldn't authenticate their love for God by looking up. They would authenticate their devotion to God by looking around, by loving the people around them. And in an unprecedented move for a religious figure, Jesus didn't leverage his equality with God or even his messianic authority to stir his followers to action. He leveraged his love. In other words, Jesus didn't anchor his new command to his divine right as king. He anchored it to his own personal sacrificial love. Why would his disciples obey this new command? Why would they obey his command to love? Because he first loved them. They were to do unto others as Jesus had already done and was about to do unto them. Hours later, again, Jesus would stage a demonstration of love that not only took their breath away, it took their excuses away as well, along with ours. Think about it. A new command I give you. Love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. Jesus' all-encompassing command was far less complicated than the current system, but it would turn out to be far more demanding as well. There would be no loopholes, no workarounds in this new brand of love. And that brings us at last to our final question, the relationship question. The question that honestly paves the path to relational health. The question that lays a foundation for mutually beneficial relationships. It's a question that brings inescapable clarity to just about every relational decision. Every relational decision you'll ever bump up against. Our final question actually takes us to the heart of Jesus' new covenant command. Question number 5 is this. What does love require of me? What does love require of me? This clarifying and yes, at times terrifying question should stand guard over our consciences. It should serve as the guide, the signpost, a compass as we navigate the unavoidable complexities of relationship. It should inform how we date, how we parent, how we boss, how we manage, how we coach. It should form a perimeter around what we say and do in our roles as spouse, coworker, and neighbor. This question, think about it, this question gives voice to God's will for us on issues where the Bible is silent. It succeeds where concordances and commentaries fail. If you're a Christian, it crushes that insipid justification we're so prone to make. Well, the Bible doesn't say there's anything wrong with fill in the blank. This question closes all those loopholes. It exposes our hypocrisy. It stands as judge and jury. It's so simple, but it is inescapably demanding. Our final question intersects with every imaginable relationship scenario you'll ever face. We're all tempted at times to ask or wonder how little we can get by with relationally, right? The very thing we don't want the person on the other side of us to consider. This question calls us all to account. When unsure of what to say or do, ask what love requires of you. When unsure of what to say or do, simply ask what love requires of you. You don't need chapter and verse. You have something better. Namely, Jesus' new, all-encompassing, inescapably simple command. We are to do unto others as our Heavenly Father through Christ has done unto us. Now, I imagine you're smart enough to know what love requires of you most of the time, but just in case, if love one another is not specific enough, the New Testament is actually full of real world applications of what Jesus' new command brand of love looks like in the real world. In fact, the authors of the New Testament didn't add to Jesus' new command. They simply told us how to apply it. And the Apostle Paul provides us with the clearest applications. In his letter to Christians living in the Roman province of Galatia, we call it the book of Galatians, he actually insists that when it comes to relationships, here's what love requires. It requires kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, and self-control. That's what love looks like in the real world. When in doubt, max those out. The interesting thing is that was Paul's short list. His most detailed description of what love looks like and acts like is actually found in his first letter to Christians who lived in Corinth. Now, this list is so familiar, I'm not sure it creates so much as a ripple in the consciences of most modern readers. And that is so unfortunate because this is the gold standard. According to Paul, what does love require of us? Paul says, here's what love requires of us. Love is patient. It's not pushy. Love requires that I move at your pace rather than demanding or requiring that you move at mine. He says love is kind. What is kindness? Kindness is love's response to weakness. Kindness is the choice to loan others our strength rather than reminding them of their weakness. It's doing for others what they cannot in that moment do for themselves. What does love require of us? He says, it does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. Love is humble. Love requires us to keep envy and pride from interfering with our ability to celebrate the success of other people. Love allows others to shine. What does love require of us? He says it does not dishonor others. Love requires us to show honor to others. Love never treats another person dishonorably. Love never treats another person disgracefully. Love never treats another person indecently. Love doesn't create regret. Think about it. Honor. Honor is at the heart of every satisfying relationship. Then he says this, it is not self-seeking. In other words, love is not selfish. Love puts the interest and the needs of the other person first. Think about it. That alone, that one idea alone, would solve most relationship problems, wouldn't it? Then he says this, love is not easily angered. In other words, love is not easily stirred up or provoked. Love absorbs. Love puts the other person's story ahead of our own. He says love keeps no record of wrongs. Love isn't a scorekeeper. Love conveniently forgets the bad, and love conveniently elevates the good. Come on, forgiving and pretending to forget, you know this. Forgiving and pretending to forget, it is your best bet. To do otherwise is a power play. Think about it. When someone holds your past over you, who's in the elevated position? Love is not about powering up. Love is about stepping down, like Jesus did. Love does not delight in evil, but it rejoices in what's true. In other words, love doesn't enjoy catching the other person doing the wrong thing. Again, love celebrates when they get it right. And then he concludes with this big idea. He says, love always protects. In other words, love requires us to do everything in our power to protect or guard the relationship. Translated, love doesn't smuggle harmful things into a relationship. Just the opposite. Love keeps harmful things out of the relationship. Love doesn't seek to win arguments. Love seeks to protect the relationship. Besides, come on, nobody ever wins an argument, especially when family's involved. I've seen too many parents win all the arguments and lose their kids in the process. Paul wraps up his list with this. Love always trusts. Always trusts. Love chooses a generous explanation when the other person doesn't meet our expectations. Love requires us to believe the best while choosing to downplay the rest. Love always hopes and love always perseveres. Now, that's quite a list, isn't it? But that's what love requires. And that's why our fifth question is not for the faint of heart. But consider this. Aren't the adjectives and verbs in Paul's list, aren't they the very thing you hope for or even expect from the people closest to you? Your spouse, your fiance, your parents, your kids. I mean, if these are the behaviors we consciously or even subconsciously expect from the folks around us, shouldn't they be required of us as well. So, what does love require of you? It may require you to pause this study, get up out of your chair, walk into the kitchen or the bedroom, and apologize. I'll wait. It may require you to pick up your phone and rebuild a bridge you burned down with your unassailable logic and your sarcasm. You were right, but being right wasn't what love required of you, was it? You may need to write a letter. You may need to rewrite an email. You may need to invite someone to coffee. And no, the other party may not be interested in what love requires of you. They may have no interest at all in what love requires of them either. But that's okay. Love requires that you just keep asking. So, with all of that as a backdrop, here's our fifth and our final decision, should you choose to decide it. Decision number 5, the relationship decision. I will decide with the interest of others in mind. I will decide with the interest of others in mind. Now, like you, my views on a variety of topics have evolved or really completely changed through the years. This includes my views on parenting, marriage, money, just to name a few. And one of the humbling things about being a pastor is that most of my views, or my views on just about everything, honestly, are documented somewhere on a hard drive. I mean, every preacher I know wishes they could go back and repreach or unpreach or delete some old sermons. We meant well, but then life happened. Kids happened. Tragedy struck. We grew. We changed. But while our knowledge and beliefs are in flux, one thing is not. There is one thing that really transcends my limited knowledge and my limited insight and even my limited experience. And that one thing is love. Love fills the gaps. Love reduces the friction created by my limited insight and knowledge. I mean, there's so many things I don't know. There are things I'll never understand. But here's the thing. My ignorance and your ignorance, my ignorance does not impede my capacity to put other people first. So while I'm not always sure what to believe, I almost always know what love requires of me. And I bet you do too. So, next time you find yourself driving home, having that imaginary conversation with your husband or your wife or your son or your daughter, next time you find yourself driving to work, having that imaginary conversation with your boss, that manager, that challenging employee, pause and ask yourself this question. What does love require of me? Because after all, good questions, they lead to better decisions, and your decisions determine the direction and the quality of your life. In our study, we've learned so much together, and I just want to pull it all together as we wrap up our time together. Your decisions serve as the framework. Remember this. Your decisions serve as the framework for the story of your life. So I want you to write a good one. And while there's nothing you can do about the decisions you choose to go back and unmake or erase, remember this. Your regrets are only part of your story. They don't have to be the story. Your past should remind you, but it does not have to define you. So incorporate our 5 questions into the rhythm of your life. Decide to tell yourself the truth, even when the truth makes you feel bad about yourself. Explore rather than ignore your conscience. Raise your standard of living from what's acceptable to what's wise. And do what love requires of you. Write a story you'll be proud to tell. A story distinguished by better decisions and fewer regrets. Again, thanks so much for inviting me into your group. I hope you'll invite me back sometime. Enjoy your discussion and happy decision making.
Yeah. The truth is coming. The truth is coming.
The timely topic the day after Valentine's. With the world things of love, probably didn't encompass this list. But we do, right? We do, we try. So if, ideally, if people have the intention, or to embrace an attitude of love, relationships are protected and disagreements aren't approached from a standpoint of winning. where vision is not polarized and people's perspectives are often softened and love takes precedence. What makes the relationship question of what does love require the most demanding of all the 5 questions? Thinking about in the world, why is this such a demanding demand? Love should be easy, right?
Well, I think, in Paul's letter, the very first thing he says that love is patience. And there it goes. That's the very first thing it says. And it's the easiest for me to just, oh yeah, I need to take a deep breath here,
I need some more patience.
need more patience, the world tells us we don't need to be patient about anything. And we get caught up in that, and it's easy to get caught up in it, all of a sudden it spills with your relationships. Because you don't want to wait. You don't want to wait for an answer, you want to wait for a compromise, you want to wait for an agreement. Want to go.
Anybody else?
Well, I think right now, there's so much division and strife that I think it's just, people don't seem to be able to. Everybody wants to, they're right, they want to be right.
Yeah.
And like he said, you could be right, but maybe that wasn't the best answer for a relationship, to just always have to be right.
One of the things I think he did a great job of talking about if you want to protect and you want to preserve a relationship, the approach of I'm winning, or someone's going to win an argument, or me over you, or I'm going to give you my perspective, that they're not putting someone else in front of you. If the other method is your first and foremost intention, that equates to strife. And I mean, we see that right now in politics, the civil distress. You can watch one one news broadcast, and it has an opinion way over here, and then you have the other one way over there, and everybody's angry with each other. Their character assassinations are going on, and to me, that kind of political kingship or power play, that's exactly not what love in God's terms are to me. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but and to live in the world that orders things that way can make you feel kind of vulnerable. Anybody else have thoughts about that?
Well, I'd like some feedback from other folks. Everything we talked about, easily agreed with and applied on a daily basis for adopting friends. But if we're talking eros, not sexual, but a romantic relationship, I think in addition to what we see here, there's an entirely different psychological dimension. So I don't know. Feedback from anyone?
So the question would be the difference between an agape kind of love versus eros kind of love, or romantic kind of love.
Yeah, that'd be a good way to phrase it.
Okay. Thoughts? Is one more challenging than the other?
Well, one, in my mind, one is easily complied with, and the other one is many times more difficult. Just because of an extra dimension.
To me,
That's not too deep, is it? Come on, it's like,
to me, intimacy requires it's a 24/7. You can be on your best behavior sometimes out in the world, but when you open yourself up intimately, there's much more of a challenge. I mean, I know when we take our oath to marry, um, the idea of preserving and protecting and not being self-seeking in a marriage on the forefront, you know, if that were our touchstone, probably divorces would be a lot less. I mean, the ideal is to protect and to serve and to care for. And I would think that's one of the bigger challenges of marriage, is to get to that point. Everybody, those of you who've been married way longer than me, probably know firsthand that the answer of how do you protect and have someone's well-being first and foremost in your mind or your heart. It's not a light topic, is it?
You know, I think just taking a stab at, and this is probably way out there, is that I think what I've learned the hard way is the agape love has got to be in place overall. I mean, because the eros is, without the agape overseeing all of what you're doing, you know, the eros will come and go, and you'll never be able to sustain it. And I think is what I'm trying to say. That's why I really miss my brother Roger. Because Roger would have something really deep to say. Okay, and I'll be like, oh yeah, I want to be like Roger.
Look like Roger may be there.
I know he might be listening, so I hope he is. But that's kind of what I'm thinking. Is kind of the agape kind of overshadowed. I mean, without the entirety of your love and what Paul says it is, the eros love becomes really hard or becomes fleeting. You know, and it's easy to come in and out of it. You know, so that's I don't know.
Well, you know, I agree with that, Ralph. I see agape as the overall universe.
Yeah.
And within that universe, there's a very small sector that may be titled the eros relationship or whatever you want to call it, that maybe has some particular characteristics in addition to.
Decline of agape.
Did you guys hear that?
I think Bill has.
Bill,
All right, Bill, please. Come here.
answer.
Professor, don't
I've
say
had
it.
enough of this.
That's right. You're on mute, Bill.
You're on mute.
Try to spit. You know.
Excuse me, I got a cough. One of the things I found over the years is that when you start talking about love, it gets real muddled to me because every one of us can look down this list that Paul gave us, you know, patience, kind, da 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 da, and like Stanley did. But what happens is, it seems to me, I found in counseling with people in premarital and afterwards, when people are having trouble in their marriage and with their kids and all that people have a tendency to look in the Bible for whatever fits, whatever works for them. And the Bible doesn't help us a whole lot in these long lists unless we're reading it privately and the Spirit speaking to us. I think one thing that has helped me in working with other people and myself is that this business of love is to think not so much of all these words, but to think so much of Jesus' behavior. It's like when you look at Jesus, we know that for us as Christians, Jesus is the model. First of all, his actions, his behavior, how he acted, how he responded to people, how he treated people. And there's plenty in the four Gospels of these fellows who gave us a description of how Jesus acted. It's kind of like in the Old Testament. You can read anything you want about God in the Old Testament, from him being a wrathful, powerful guy to being a very soft-hearted God. But when you look at the actions, the behavior, how he did, that's the key. So with Jesus, it's all about how did he behave, not taking these words of Paul and trying to apply them and beat each other to death with those things. Now, the words of Jesus are important too, of course, but his behavior is the key. And if anybody with any brains and honesty is asked, tell me, what is the key characteristic of Jesus' behavior? You'd have to say it is self-denial. It is sacrifice. That's what Jesus' life stood for. People all around the world from every culture, every background, when they read the Gospels, they come up with this. Jesus lived and taught self-sacrifice, self-denial. So I think each one of us, when we come to some situation, the question is, are we willing to put others first, to sacrifice, to deny self? And I tell you what, it does not pay off in our currency. It does not pay off in our economy. When you sacrifice, it's going to cost. And you have to ask, am I doing this because this is what my Lord Jesus wants me to do? This is what he did. Or are you not doing it because it's just too hard? It didn't pay off. I didn't get what I want to. So I think we need to keep that in mind when we're talking about love.
Thank you. Pretty profound. I read an excerpt from Max Lucado's He Chose the Nails, and he was talking about how I meant to bring it and read it today, but I kind of got away from me. But Max Lucado talks about how a lot of people approach relations by it's fine until it doesn't, and then you start ticking away and keeping track of the wrongs and the hurts, or oh, they did it again, and go into kind of a self-protection mode. And before you know it, you got these stories in your head, and then you approach somebody with that story, and then the equation goes, they approach you, and before you know it, you have the outcome. And he was making the case about, so if you forgive someone their debt and you truly forgive them, it's like Bill was saying, that is a sacrifice and that costs you, but then what follows after that is something bigger. And what begets a list of wrongs is resentment, bitterness. It's an attitude of not love, really. It's gonna get fighting and strife. It's not equating to love. If you truly forgive and you deal with the disappointment, but you go ahead and act on the other's behalf. Of course, you've got all the discussions about what do you do when you set limits or have boundaries, but putting that in place, if you act on someone else's behalf, then you let the strife go. But we know that's not easy. Pride gets in the way, disappointment's there, hurt's there. So, he was saying, when you forgive, it's not a light matter, it's a very deep matter, but to choose otherwise is much more costly. I've never framed that in my mind. Okay, if I keep going along and I keep nursing my hurt or my argument or my rightness, what am I going to get from that? That doesn't soften anything.
Makes you feel good.
Yeah.
I don't know. The more I try to be right in my mind, I get more anxious. Phyllis, did you have something you want to say?
Well, it's something that has helped me. I said, I think we have to accept the practicality that some of us just are not as lovable as others. And when we bump up against those people, and some of them might be family members, I think it's been important for me, kind of adding on to what Bill said. Yes, look at Jesus' example. How did he behave when he was walking around on this planet? But the next step is, how do I see myself in relationship to Jesus? Do I see myself as a saved sinner, as one who wasn't so lovable and clean, but yet Jesus accepted me, loved me enough to die for me? When I can truly see myself that way, it helps me to look at others as Jesus sees them. I think most of you are on the email list that gets Bill's Substack articles that he sent this week. Did you get the picture of the sketch that he sent? Did you get it?
Yes.
That picture, which you'll get the full article this week, won't they, Bill? You'll get the full article. His pencil sketch of the Father with open arms and a big smile on his face. Growing up as a Baptist in the Deep South, there were a lot of, you can't do this. You can't go to the movies. You can't dance. You don't smoke. You don't drink. I mean, there was a whole list of don'ts. And you kind of get the picture that God frowned a lot. And I love Bill's sketch of the father of the prodigal son, and that the father had a big, bold smile on his face that says, I accept you. And I think that's how we have to look at other people. And it's hard. I'd be the first to tell you sometimes, oh yeah, it's easy for me to look at those people that I love, my children, my grandchildren, all, but to look at somebody else with that kind of smile of acceptance is just hard, especially if we don't see ourselves in the proper relationship to Jesus. Does that make any sense whatsoever in my rambling? I think it's key to relationships is to have ourselves in proper relationship to our Lord Jesus. And that's all I got to say about that.
I think for me, it calls to mind that if I can remember who I am in Jesus and the sacrifice, who I was before obtaining that grace and freedom, if I'm living in despair or shame or angst or anger, I'm not going to come from a place of love. If I remember that I've been redeemed and cared for, that undeserved generosity, I can't stay in that place. That old saying, hurt people, and that currency just what pays off once you enjoy and appreciate that sacrifice, that currency becomes much more generous. To me, that's what that means to me. Yep. Can't hear you. You're on mute.
It might help if I turn my mute off. In that note you sent out, you asked about any personal conflicts and all, and I got to thinking, it reminded me of a couple that came to see me, a member of our church, and I was the pastor, and they came because they were at the point of getting a divorce. And they said, look, we really want to salvage this marriage, but we are fighting so much all the time, it's just not worth it. And I said, well, have you always been this way? And they said, no, when we first started, we just loved each other and we were so friendly and all that. But now it's just not working. And I said, well, what happened? Well, to cut a long story short, what happened is a man loved to go fishing. Those people in South Georgia love to go fishing in the afternoons. So he went and bought himself an expensive boat and all the equipment on it. And every day when he'd get off work, he'd get in his boat, take off, and go fishing and come back after dark, watch a little television, go to bed. So his wife spent her whole life at home all alone. And when he came home, she wanted him to hang around and talk and be like the good old days, but he wanted to go fishing. He took off, and she was so angry. And they came in, and she said, this isn't working, uh, because all he cares about is going fishing with himself and his buddies, and he cares nothing about me. All he wants me to do is have a meal for him when he comes home, and then he takes off. I don't ever see him anytime. And this is not a marriage. It's not worth it. So anyway, they'd left, and I said, "Well, let's give it a few weeks, and before you go to lawyers." Well, I asked her. I called her and asked her to come back in. And when she came back in, I said, "What have you been doing to try and fix this?" And she said, "Well, I've been trying to tell him all the reasons that he ought to quit all that and stay home, and let's try and rebuild our marriage. And all he does is get mad at me." I said, "Well, what do you think about a different approach?" And she said, "What's that?" I said, "Why don't you think about this? Why don't you try and give him what he wants? He wants to go fishing. He wants you to give him food." I said, "What if you pack him a snack? And what if you get things ready for him, and you tell him that you're happy for him going? And when he comes home, you say, 'Oh, I hope you have a good time while you go fishing today,' and and have everything ready for him." And I said, "Just try that approach, that you're trying to do what he wants." And she said, "Well, what's that going to do?" I said, "Well, you're denying yourself, and you're doing this for him." She said, "Well, sounds stupid to me, but I'll try it." So she did. And she did it for a couple of weeks. And she said, the next thing you know, in time, he started saying, "I feel a little bad about you doing all these things. You're so nice, and I'm just gone all the time." And would you believe it? In time, the man sold his boat. He decided he wanted to be at home with his wife, and he wanted to plan some things they could do together because she was so sweet and so gracious. Now you're saying, well, that's a kind of a wild story, but it's true. And I'm not saying that being a doormat and giving in to everything is the answer to all of our problems. What I am saying is somebody has to break the cycle of anger and of fighting. And maybe the way to do it is to sacrifice, to deny self, to show more love to a person that can possibly stand it, and that love can overcome. And I'm saying that sometimes that is a key I found in a relationship where there is love in the background, where both really feel that way, but one is having a moment of selfishness. And so I think every one of us knows that with children, it may be giving them more rope, letting them do the things, sacrificing. Oh, I don't mean giving them money so they can go out and buy drugs. I'm not talking about being dishonest. I'm talking about being honest. Honest love, sacrifice, I think makes a tremendous impact.
You know, one of the things that came to my mind is if our approach to someone is negating and trying to talk them into what they're doing as not, well, that'll physics, that which you resist persists. If that's your approach to negate, Bill's point is so beautiful, as he's doing what he's naturally inclined to do. And so if you resist that, negating equals usually defense and not openness. That's a really beautiful story. Anybody else have any thoughts?
Well, I think it's easy sometimes in a relationship that we tend to want to keep score, which he mentioned to, well, it was like that relationship that Bill talked about. She's probably, well, here's what you did. You went fishing, you ignored me, so now you owe me. So I think it is easy to sometimes score.
So,
Okay.
and I promise I'm not a heretic. But, and I'm not talking about a loving relationship, romantic relationship, I'm talking about maybe a social relationship. But there are some people who either morally, ethically, intellectually, or socially are too bad to be around. And I think there are probably some people in the world that should be shunned from your life. Just because you're protecting your family, your kids, or yourself emotionally or mentally. Anybody have feedback on that?
Did you guys hear?
I'll tell you, Ron, that a different lifetime, one of my very best friends and mentor, as I started, began to help, they helped me turn my life over to God, years ago now. He would tell me, and he would tell others that Ralph and I have been best friends for, almost 20 years. He goes, but I can't hang out with him. I couldn't hang out with him. He was too secular a person to be around my family. And that's what he would,
Yeah,
that was an honest evaluation of where I was. And to him, it was a testimony to where I was headed and where I was going. But yeah, absolutely.
Sure.
You have to protect your family,
Yeah.
and your marriage, and I think you talked about earlier about not introducing things into your marriage that are harmful. That whatever that is, same with your family, your friendships, and and everything else. It's our responsibility to guard against that, especially for our family. So, amen.
One of the questions which I thought was interesting that Andy Stanley had asked about, thinking about, and not that it's the negative approach, but if you think about the Bible and the times that Jesus, how he handled contrarians, rejection,
Phyllis,
violence, people coming after him,
you muted.
where his approach to them
You're muted.
was different.
What is the fellow's name that commented out there in the white shirt?
Ron,
Ron
If
Royer,
you're
Bill.
talking about me, it's Ron.
Ron,
yeah, Ron.
take him off your email list, Bill.
Yeah, it's like, Oh, wait.
Bill got thought. No, Bill did.
If,
Bill had a comment.
He's still,
sorry.
All right, there we go. There we go. I've got to say this. I really like what Ron said, and that is that there are some people who sometimes, no matter how much self-sacrifice, they'll crucify you. I know there have been some couples who I have talked to, like I did that other one, work out great. But then there are other couples who come, and I've said to the wife, what you need to do is get a divorce. Because you see, the truth is that you have to find out, as Jesus said, to love them as you would yourself. Jesus is telling us very clearly, there's sometimes you have to realize there's going to be suffering and there's going to be pain, and you need to do the best you can for them and for you. And the best thing may be to live your life another way, to go another direction. And sometimes I know in this political world, I've had to have conversations with people on different sides of the political world, Democrat and Republican. Some get so much hate and so much anger, like I did with a fellow here recently. I had to talk to him long distance, and the fellow was so angry. He said, I don't even want to talk to you. And I said, I understand what you're saying. I said, but you know what? I just want you to know, no matter how long it goes, I still love you. I think you're a good guy. And I hope someday we can get back together and talk as friends. But you know what, friends? We have to sometimes, like Jesus say, give them to him and to just pray for them. And if you and I believe, which I do, and I'm sure everybody in this room does, you believe God can touch your heart, that we can't. And when we are in the way, it may be we need to back away and turn them over to God. So sometimes there's no activity we can do. We have to do what Jesus did. Do you remember what he did when they were trying to crucify him? The Bible says he was silent. He knew it was time to turn him over to the Father and just let him handle it. So I think that's a very good point that you made.
Thank you. Well, we have, for this second time, we have the new class coming in. This is a deep discussion, and I think it's also talks about the heart of the matter about us loving and being in the world and wanting to make the right decisions, the wise decisions, and then also trying to find where you know what is deeper and where we have to seek that. And thank you all for going to listening today. And thank you all for your lovely input. And Phyllis, can we take a few more minutes for Phyllis to talk to us about next week? And
Yep, that's how we're gonna. But I'd like to let Phyllis do it, but I'd also like to thank Cheryl for getting us through this the last few lessons. So thank you, Cheryl. Good job. Good job. So Miss Phyllis, you want to give us a preview of what we have coming?
I'll be happy to do that. But first, I want to tell you, I could have solved that couple's problem with the fishing. He could have done like I did. I just had my bucket and my pole ready to go fishing because I like to go fishing. So Bill had a fishing buddy and I was ready to go when he was ready to go. And he'd bait my hook, which was even better. Cheryl, you have done such a good job with some heavy subject matter, and thank you so much for the work. I know the work that goes into this. I'll start next week a 6 weeks series on being fearfully and wonderfully made. I was talking to Ann Muir yesterday, and I said, if I were going to teach this series to a group of teenagers, it would be very, very different than what it's going to be to a group of what some call teenagers. But how we look at our bodies, we're going to take some careful look at our bodies. We're going to apply that to how we should see ourselves, but more importantly, what does the way we are created say about our creator? I have some interesting things planned in that we have some, wonderful doctors in our midst who are going to be speaking to us a little bit. So I think the next 6 weeks will be interesting. I hope to make it interesting and meaningful to all of you.
Well, those of us who have been around for a while have zero doubts that whatever Phyllis wants to talk about is going to be meaningful, interesting to all of us. So we look forward to that, and Julie and Mark, you'll be in for a treat with Phyllis leading the charge. So there'll be no doubt about that. So all right, going to be a beautiful week. We'll continue to pray for our brothers and sisters traveling in the hospital, recovering. It's interesting you mentioned that we're going to be talking about being beautifully made and wonderfully made. And in walks my brother Rand, my brother Joe. And those two guys are walking miracles. What they've been through in their lives. I'm not sure about the beautiful part with brother Joe at the moment. He's looking a little hairy there, but y'all can see him in the back. He got a little rough look there, but that's okay. So we look forward to seeing y'all next week. God bless, and keep the updates coming as we get them from our various.
Thank you.
We'll see y'all next week. Bye.